Hey guys, this is GalahadB again. Sorry for the delay, but I was suffering from a cold and that made me want to not do another video for a bit. But now I'm reasonably healthy again and able to do another video. The plus side of my break is that I now have a couple more games that I think are pretty interesting. All of them are games where I'm playing the Shadow, so yeah, I hope that's going to be interesting for you as well. I think there's a lot to take away from those. Let me know what you think. So the first game I want to cover is a game I have played almost 2 weeks ago against PeterM, and I think this is a very interesting game. For one, because it was fairly close, and for two, because at the time that we played this game, I was actually rank 1 on the all-time ladder, and PeterM, my opponent, was number 2 on the all-time ladder. So it's rank 1 against rank 2 on the all-time ladder. So that's, I think, very exciting. Yeah, and I think we lived up to the expectations, I hope. Peter didn't play a lot for the past months, but I think he certainly was still strong enough to make this a very exciting game. Okay, so this is turn 1. I'm playing as the Shadow. I start with Cruel Weather. That's always a very good draw. One of the strongest strategy cards, and I'm also very glad to see a Deadly Strife in my hand. I usually play Horde from the East for the combat effect, because Deadly Strife is just so powerful. But yeah, sometimes you want to use the muster. And Peter starts with an end card that's not that great, usually on turn 1. But he has a very playable strategy card. And starting with one of the Rohan cards is usually pretty good, because it gives you a chance to get a pretty big army to Forts of Eisen or to Helm's Deep. And yeah, with a Palantir here, he can also use a cycle. The first thing I usually notice for the Shadow is, do they have 2 musters for Saruman or not? And I don't know, recently I've started to feel less bad if I don't get my 2 musters turn 1, because while it sucks not getting Saruman turn 1, it also means that 3 people are not gonna get Gandalf the White turn 2. And from my experience, the toughest games usually as Shadow are games where the 3 people get a 5th die on turn 2 from Gandalf the White. It's less of a problem if they separate Strider, just because the Strider guide ability is so powerful, especially coupled with having 5 dice. So yeah, I feel less worried if they separate Strider turn 1. I feel very worried if they kill off Gandalf turn 1 or turn 2 and get the will to bring him back to life. So I'm disappointed, but I'm not that disappointed. What stings me more is that I have 2 Palantirs and no playable card right now. That's a bigger problem to me. So yeah, turn 1, 3 people pass, that's usually correct, and I draw another useless card, so I'm gonna have to spend 2 dice to just draw cards. That's not great. Yeah, and he can cycle with Gandalf and reinforce Rohan. I don't know why I don't draw the second card right now. There's literally no way I can use it. Maybe I'm hoping for him to use a ring, so I can maybe do something with a ring. Yeah. He moves twice, I hit him once, which is reasonable, I think. And it's a 1 in reveal. That is pretty good for me, because either he has to kill off Gandalf inefficiently, which would mean that a Moria route would be a lot more risky, especially since he would risk me drawing 2 tiles from Moria, because he doesn't know what cards I have or will draw. But then if he does not kill Gandalf, then next turn he can set Strider to become the guide, but that means it's much less likely for him to kill off Gandalf next turn. And if I remember correctly here, he does something very interesting. I think he takes random. And taking a random here is actually very interesting because you have a 2 out of 7 chance to get a Hobbit. And getting a Hobbit before you pass Moria, or before you have to declare somewhere to the east, um, allows you to have a companion in and around the Shire, or maybe even Ered Luin, so you can threaten Fearfire Foes or Book of Mazabal. Now it's only a 2 out of 7 chance to hit a Hobbit, and there's 1 out of 7 chance you hit Strider, which would really suck. And then you have 3 out of 7 for Gimli, Boromir, Legolas, which not ideal, but also not the biggest deal in the world. It accelerates Gollum, which you usually want because most of the games it's not about corruption, it's about the speed at which you can achieve a free people ring victory. So usually it's okay to lose some companions inefficiently, but not Strider because you need his guide ability. And yeah, if it hits Gandalf, like, yeah, you're a little sad, but it's not the worst. I mean, there's plenty of people who would just kill off Gandalf right now to the one and reveal. And the second advantage outside of drawing into Hobbit maybe is that as soon as you take a casualty, you can name a new guide. So he can get Strider to become the guide right now and use this rather useless muster die to hide the fellowship again. I mean, he did draw Celeborn's Galadrim, yes, but do you really want to play it with that muster now? I mean, I'm not even threatening Lorien right now. You might be able to play it with a Palantir, draw 2 cards with Gandalf as a guide. And the other good thing about doing it like this is you get to hide with this die, and then on phase 2 of the next turn, you can then switch back to Gandalf the White as the guide and have a good chance of killing him off next turn. And if you roll a Will of the West, then yeah, you might even bring him back. Well, not next turn because I did not bring in Saruman this turn, but yeah, you're happy to kill him off next turn if possible to a good tile. Whereas if you don't take a random here and don't sacrifice Gandalf, then you'll be left revealed. You cannot hide this turn unless you give me a ring, which I don't think would be a good idea. And you're left with this muster. Like, what are you even gonna do with that muster? Maybe play Celeborn's. I mean, it's not terrible, but it also gives away that you have it, and yeah. So yeah, he takes a random, and he does get Pippin. Now this is good even if you don't have Fearfire Foes or Book of Mazabal right now, because you might draw into it, and because it keeps the shadow guessing. Like, now I have to worry, does he have it? And even if he doesn't have it, when will he draw it? So yeah, he moves it to Buckland, which means Book of Mazabal is not an immediate threat. Fearfire Foes certainly is. And so the next, yeah, he moves Strider to become the new guide, like I said, because you can do that when you lose a companion. Now the question is, where do you reveal? Do you reveal into Harlan, or do you reveal into High Pass? And I think this is always very difficult to judge right, because Moria is much more risky. There's a good chance that you'll get through it with just 1 extra tile, and no harm done, depending on the tile. But the fact that I drew an eye first means there's only 3 eyes left, so the chances of a weak Moria are much lower. So yeah, he chooses to go to the High Pass, and I think that's not a mistake. That's just playing it safe. I draw another card. I'm drawing a character card. I'm not entirely sure if that's correct, because at this point, him having revealed in the High Pass means yeah, that he might be too slow if I go for a very fast military victory. But it's not looking too fast right now with that start that I'm putting on, so I felt like, yeah, let's hedge my bets. I did hit him on the first 2 steps, and if I do hit on the first 2 steps, I'm much more likely to go for a corruption strategy or a mixed approach. Whereas if I'm not hitting him on the first 2 tiles, on the first two steps, then I'm much less likely to really go for corruption strategy at that point. So yeah, he uses this master die to hide, which is a very good move on his part. And I decide, yeah, okay, let's use this early reveal. I don't have any pressing moves to make. I feel like I have some time to pursue a military chance. Yeah. So I move Nazgul around, which might be a mistake, but I think it's reasonable. Like, it's not clear mistake or clear obvious move. So he can switch back to Gandalf now. Yeah, I drew some more cards that are not too great. I mean, Swarm of Bats is nice, so I can prevent the Scout up here. This is a card to cycle or discard. But I have Cruel Weather, I have a forward mustering card, and I have Isildur's Bane. And he also drew pretty good cards, Dane and Mithril. Yeah. So I allocate one eye, roll two more. He gets his will, but there's no Saruman in play, so he's not going to be able to get in Gandalf. He moves, and he's safe. I muster Isengard, of course. He musters the elves. With armies around in a standard way, he moves the elves again, threatening to put the elves to war next turn. Oh, actually, yeah, he and this is interesting. He pushes the elves to war this turn. Now that would allow me to bring in the Witch King, but I didn't have enough musters. I already put Isengard to war, so there's no way I'm gonna bring in the Witch King this turn. I can bring in Saruman though. It does mean he cannot move 2 steps this turn, and it means he's not moving armies around. The plus side is he has Celeborn's Galadrim in hand. He gets to go first next turn, and I'm not even next to any of his Elven strongholds right now, so there's a good chance that I'll not be able to besiege them in time before he can muster up a lot. So I think this is a very good move on his part, getting the elves to war before I can even besiege a single Elven stronghold is pretty powerful. And you don't really want to move twice against 3 eyes and reroll. Like, that's a pretty likely hit. So yeah, I think that's a very good move. I do get in Saruman this turn. I feel like he did not kill off Gandalf this turn. I want to get my 8th die as fast as possible. Declaring here is good for 2 reasons. It prevents Nazgul Strike and Nazgul Surge. And there's no downside really. I mean, not like you really think about going back to Falls of Brunnen after having declared into the High Pass. So yeah. Oh, I discarded Rage of the Dunlendings. Yeah, if you look at this end, I really hate giving up on a forward mustering card. I really hate giving up on Deadly Strike. Like, this is one of the cards I'll almost never discard. I'm not gonna discard Cruel Weather, nor Isildur's Bane before Mordor. Like, if he's in Mordor, Isildur's Bane is a lot more risky, depending on the number of eyes. So, yeah, I mean, what else would you discard? Breaking, a very good card, especially this early on. Yeah. Alright. And so he gets 2 masters, which is very good for him, because elves are at war, he can now really start mastering up. And I get 2 masters, which means I'll get the Witch King. He cannot get Gandalf this turn. So all in all, I think it's a pretty good turn for both of us. He doesn't get Gandalf, but he gets a lot of mustering done. Move once, which is okay because I'm not moving fast with the military, so he can take his time. Fellowship. Yeah, he moves immediately. I guess that's okay. You want to not be revealed to something like Isildur's Bane or Thing. the foul thing wouldn't be as bad, I guess. Because I have a reroll already, so no real sense in rushing. Yeah, I get the Witch King, of course. He passes, and I play Cruel Weather now. And I guess that's something many people might not agree with. But the thing is, I don't like waiting until the last opportunity to play it, even though it maximizes the odds. But then if he gets revealed into Moronon, then my Cruel Weather will be useless. So you can be too greedy with it. And I have the Palantir now. I prevent him from reaching Carrick maybe next turn, which would be a safe haven. And I have a lot of cards in hand because I drew 2 cards turn 1. I want to play them so I don't have to discard them. And what else would I play? Olokai? I don't even know where to reinforce yet. Shadows Moving is not playable because Southrons are not a war yet. Breaking I can play. Isildur's Bane, and that's something very important, is you don't want to play Isildur's Bane right now, because that would give him time to react to it. I want to play, if I want to play a tile drawing card, and he does not have any movement left, especially if Strider's Guide, you want to play it as your last action in the turn. So he needs to spend a new die next turn to cancel the effects of a reveal if you do in fact reveal him. It's an okay play now because Gandalf is Guide and he can sacrifice him to Isildur's Bane, which means he can also not change the guide composition. I'm slightly worried that he might have something to separate companions using the Palantir, and that would mean he gets to elect a new guide, Strider, and then could hide with one of the remaining dice. And I mean, Cruel Weather gets value now. I don't need to hold on to it for 5 more turns. I think that's the right call. I could not have played it last turn, because then I would have pushed him from high pass to Forts of Brunnen, and then he would have had the chance to switch back to the Moria route. So this was the earliest opportunity I had to play Cruel Weather, and I think it's reasonable. Like, not 100%, but I don't think it's a mistake. So yeah, he musters in Lorien. Makes sense. Though I feel like maybe you muster the regulars, one in Lorien, one in Woodland Realm, because you see this army going up north. So I continue on. What else am I gonna do? And he just drew the Fire Force, and now I'm like, oh no, this is bad, really bad. And he gets to draw another card for Gandalf. And now I'm like, oh man, this is not going well at all. Like, I'm slow, rolling a lot of Palantirs, not making the most use, I guess, out of them. My one out is that Fellowship is proceeding pretty slowly, and, well, maybe next turn he's not gonna get a great roll, but this is not a good start at all. Like, I'll proceed on, because what else am I gonna do? Like, it's too late to turn back. I can't move all the way to Southern Ravanian and then head back south. Yeah, so I press on, because I think, like, with this army, maybe some reinforcements from the Eastlings should at least be enough to get 3 victory points here, and who knows, maybe even more if I get lucky in combat. Because usually in War of the Ring, like, luck changes. Like, the game is long enough usually that a good start for one side oftentimes means that the other side will get more luck later on. So it usually balances itself out more or less, and obviously not all the time, but like, I'm worried right now, but I feel like, okay, I mean, he's had some good turns, and soon things will change. And so yeah, Peter musters a North Elite, the Dale, which makes perfect sense, because I mean, you can think about mustering an elite in Woodland Realm, but the Elven force pool is so small, while the Northern force pool is pretty big, and the Elven force pool protects 4 strongholds, right? Woodland Realm, Lorien, Rivendell, and Grey Havens, that's 8 victory points, whereas the North got only a single victory point. Oh, well, actually 2 victory points in Dale and in the Shire. So the North is much more expendable. Like, you risk leaving 2 victory points open after you muster all of those. Whereas the Elves, like, if you muster everything into Woodland Realm and Lorien, then Rivendell is a very likely target, and maybe even the Grey Havens. And also, Kid and ships are not a threat anymore. So yeah, I would try to muster other nations over the Elves if both are at war, and especially here if I feel like Dale can just protect Woodland Realm anyways. Why muster the Elves when I can muster the more expendable North? I think that's a very good play on his part. And now for my last action, I play Sealed Bane here and reveal him. And like I said, this means he cannot react to it, really. And even if it was a 2 reveal, for example, he can sacrifice Gandalf to it because it's Isildur's Bane, and he will be revealed now. And that means he only has 4 dice, and either he switches guides and he puts Aragon Strider to become guide, but that means it's much more difficult for him to kill off Gandalf next turn, because with 4 dice he would need to hide first, then move, and first move is probably safe. So second move might be a hit, but then even if it's a hit, Strider's guide. So either you risk a random, which has the same chance of killing Strider than it has to find Gandalf. It's very unlikely for him to get Gandalf the White next turn if he changes guides. Whereas if he does not change guides, then, well, he needs to spend one of his precious character dice to hide, another to move. And he also really wants to muster more units and also move them into strongholds. So he really has a lot of things to do next turn. And it's going to be very difficult for him to do all things at once, which is why I play it now instead of earlier, because then he still would have had enough. I don't think you would give me a ring this turn, but I don't even want to give him the choice if I can prevent it, which I could, like this. So yeah, he gets revealed next turn, and I roll 9 dice to his 4, so that's another plus thing, right? With all this slow moving and Gandalf still being the guide, and him, I guess, not rolling a lot of wills last turn, 1 or 2. Yeah, turn 2 was the 2-will turn. It means that I might be able to overcome this slow start of mine and his strong start. So he does change the guides to Strider, which makes perfect sense. Like I said, even if you keep Gandalf, it's unlikely to kill him off this turn. First move is probably safe, so you need to move. Well, use 3 dice, hide the Fellowship, move twice, and then use a will to bring back Gandalf. So I feel like this is a very reasonable approach. And now this is a rule. Like, I allocated 1 eye because I had to, and because I basically always do, unless it's completely impossible for the Fellowship to win game. And I roll a bunch of attacks, like so many attacks. And then him having put 2 nations to war using cards and dice and really wanting to muster more and moving armies around, he gets not even a single muster, let alone an army muster, let alone a Will of the West. Like, this is probably the worst roll he... Well, okay, rolling for Palantir would have been even worse, but this is really bad. And the thing with this, usually it would be great, right? I mean, 3 movement against only 1 eye, try it as the guide, use the Palantir to hide, and then move 3 times. Great. But if you do that now, I mean, Lorien falls under siege, Woodland Realm under siege, then attack Dale. Like, all your mustering would only amount to a single extra lead into Lorien, and the North being out of the game. Like, that's rough. And if you do that, you wouldn't even get Dale into Woodland Realm. Plus, it's very likely for me to hit him on the second move, and if I reveal him then, you would only be able to move 2 steps, and you lose so much for that. And there's one more thing, but we'll get to that a little later. So on one hand, you might be happy seeing 3 character dice against only 1 eye, if you're the 3 people, but given the setup here, this is not what you wanted at all. You wanted an army move for sure, and you also wouldn't have minded to see 1 or 2 musters here. But yeah, such is the game. Like I said, oftentimes when one when one nation gets a good early game, there usually comes 1 or 2 turns where luck goes the other way, and this is definitely one of the biggest swings this game. So yeah, he hides with a Palantir. I mean, is there any reason to save it? I guess not. I mean, Caliborn, you won't have to play it this turn. Dane, same. Yeah. So I do a double army move. I prepare Cassaz, and I move into Old Forest Road. So I threaten to besiege both Elven strongholds, and now he has a choice. Do you want to use a ring to muster up the elves even more? Or do you want to use one of your character dice, which you really want to use to move the Fellowship against only 1 eye, to send Dale to Woodland Realm? Or use a ring to an army move, move Dale to Woodland Realm, and Edoras to Westernet. Now, why Edoras to Westernet, you might ask? Because right now, Helm's Deep is very vulnerable, and I have a lot of attack dice left. And as long as you don't move Edoras to Westernet, there's always a risk that the Shadow player might just storm into Helm's Deep, take it, and then all your Rohan Masters are basically useless. Plus, you don't even have Gandalf the White. You cannot get Gandalf the White this turn, so there's no way this gets punished this turn. And even next turn, you would have to first bring back Gandalf, and then play an end card. So I have at least 1 action, and if you don't kill Gandalf off this turn, which is very likely because Strider's the guide, then you need 2 dice next turn to even get Gandalf to Fangorn, or you threaten an end card. That gives me 2 dice to muster up. So yeah, as long as you don't move Edoras to Westernet, Helm's Deep is almost free. And I do have the dice to go for it this turn. I can muster 2 leads, 2 attacks to Helm's Deep. I don't need to take it this turn. As soon as I siege it, there's no way Rohan can really do much about it. And then I would still have 2 dice to attack both Woodland Realm and Lorien. That would be a pretty big turn. So yeah, that's something you might consider. But he chooses not to use a ring. He chooses just to move Dale to Woodland Realm, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I besiege Lorien, then besiege Woodland Realm, I think. Okay, I take Dale first. Sure. Right, and then Carrick's the north is completely out of it. And then besiege Woodland Realm. And notice that Peter still did not move the Fellowship even once. Because he fears Helm's Deep. Still, as long as I have 2 dice left, I might go for it. Especially with this Palantir, because I might have New Powers Rising, which I do have. And I mean, there's 25% chance of me having it at this point. I've drew 6 cards out of 24. So now I play it, and he knows, oh, this is looking dicey. And now, yeah, you have to ask yourself what you do here. Like, do you move twice? Or do you try to protect Helm's Deep? You might say, okay, screw Helm's Deep. It's only 2 victory points. But I mean, Woodland Realm, Lorien will fall eventually. If you also lose Helm's Deep, then Shadow's at 6 victory points. Well, 7 victory points. Soonish. Which means Dol Amroth plus Pelagia would put me to 10. I don't even need Erebor. And if I bring the guys from Rune over to Woodland Realm, that should certainly be enough. And if I bring in the Dunlandings to Lorien, even through Caliborn, that should also be enough. So I feel like if you completely give up on Helm's Deep right now, that would be very risky. But the flip side is if you really want to protect Helm's Deep right now, you need to use both of those character dice, and that means on a turn where Shadow allocated only a single eye, Fellowship would have moved 0 steps, and that's also a very brutal turn. This could have been prevented by giving me a ring. Then you would have moved Dale to Woodland Realm, Edoras to Western Net, use one more character to bring them to Port of Eisen or Helm's Deep, and use the final die to move the Fellowship once. But that would cost you a ring. Not sure if that would be worth it. But yeah, Peter decides to not give up Helm's Deep like that. And I think if you get an early Rohan Master card like Eomer, well, Eomer you could put straight to Helm's Deep, so that maybe wouldn't count. But if you bring him to Edoras, or if you play Riders of Theoden, or the Red Arrow, I think you really should look to defend Helm's Deep, because then you have a real shot at, getting an upset in Rohan. Whereas if you don't, I mean, it's only 3 HP that you can add to the siege. Maybe it's not worth it then. But now it's 5 HP, and that means the siege might be very bloody. I attack Rohan now. Of course, why not? I mean, there's no risk here. No Gandalf inside. I'm very sure now that he will use his final die to move Westernnet to Helm's Deep after seeing me attack Forts of Eisen. And then I can still decide whether I want to go for it or not. And I get 2 hits here, that's great. He gets nothing. And suddenly Helm's Deep looks like a real threat. And if he hadn't moved Edoras up, then this guy would have faced a very certain death. So yeah. And I decide, well, I don't need to rush attacking Helm's Deep. There's only one card that can punish it, and that's Eomer. I don't want to discard any of those cards. All of them are great. I want to muster more, because Woodland Realm is going to be tough. Lorien is also going to be tough. Yeah, I don't want to discard. And I decide, okay, maybe I can take Erebor later on. Let's reinforce Woodland Realm. Because then I have a very easy road to 10 victory points, right? I take 5 up here, 2 in Lorien, 2 in Helm's Deep, and then either Pelagia or Edoras for my final 10 victory points. So yeah, that's very big swing. This turn force is very, very big. The one good thing is Fellowship managed to hide, and now Gandalf is back to guiding, which gives him the chance to maybe get Gandalf the White next turn. So I can allocate 0 eyes now, and that would not be terrible, because even if I don't roll a single eye, at least it means he will not be able to get Gandalf unless he spends a die not moving the Fellowship, but instead separating Gandalf, and then uses another die to bring him back. But it's unlikely that I will not roll a single eye, even if I don't allocate one. So I'm kind of torn here. But I think, given that last turn, that my military is now progressing fast enough. I mean, Helm's Deep is not going to be easy now. There's a very real world where I don't take it immediately and need to bring back up. But the Fellowship is also pretty far back now. Like, it's still 3, 6, 8 steps. And I have almost 3 strongholds on the siege right now with some sizable armies. I feel pretty good about the speed this is going, and I want to prevent Gandalf. I roll 1 eye and get a pretty decent roll otherwise. Yeah, and he gets 2 movement, maybe a third with the ring, and we'll probably get Gandalf this turn. Yeah, no time to waste. He starts, he's safe. I besiege Helm's Deep, so Aomi is not a thing anymore. Again, I don't hit. And yeah, and I decide to go for Helm's Deep now. Yeah, the thing, why am I doing it? Because I'm almost sure now that he's gonna use a ring to use this Master Die to move the Fellowship again, hoping for a hit so he can bring back Gandalf. And that means none of his dice will be used to muster up anything in Rohan, which means I can, if I win Helm's Deep, I can completely take over Rohan, and then Rohan will be out of the game. And then even if he kills Saruman later on, I wouldn't even mind, because he's done his job. So that's the plan. Well, thinking about that, I mean, maybe I even get rid of that Nazgul, right? At this point, I wouldn't even really want to hit him when he moves again. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think I play Delary of Orthanc here. I mean, what does Peter have? Advantageous position, I guess. I mean, there's no way you play Swords and Eriador. Yeah. Yeah, and that cancels my card. 1 hit against 2, which is reasonable. And I attack again. What did I draw? Relentless Assault. Yeah, that's not great, but I have another Devilry. And he plays an end card, which almost does nothing. Just 1 additional hit. That's pretty bad. And yeah, I tried to take Helm's Deep down, but I don't hit. Now I know, okay, it's not gonna be enough this turn. Unfortunately. So the battle in Helm's Deep didn't go amazingly well, but yeah, as can be expected, I guess. And crucially, he does not do what I thought he would. He does not give me a ring. Yeah, just some armies moving around. I hit him now with a 3. He kills off Gandalf. So I don't know. Maybe you spend a ring here. That does give me Edoras and Fold. But I mean, yeah, the thing is, if you use a ring and I don't hit Gandalf on the 3rd step, then you at least get to move 4 spaces. You're in Northern Ravanian. I don't know. Yeah, now I can play Orc Patrol. Gandalf is gone. But I draw 9. Okay. What else could I have done? Nothing really. I mean, Orcs multiplying again. Okay, maybe you play that. But Onslaught is pretty powerful. Plus, I'm not sure I need it right now. Because Lorien might still win. I don't know. He has Celeborn. And if he does not, then that army can win against the Lorien crew. It's gonna be tough, but if I take it slow and get a little lucky, then that might be enough. So yeah, suddenly he's making progress, but he's still only on 4 dice. He did have a will last turn. couldn't use it to bring Gandalf in. And now he's still gonna be without Gandalf on turn 6, which is pretty rough. Yeah, he moves before I get rerolls. I think that makes total sense. Save. I want to finish Helm's Deep. He wants to move again. Yeah, and now I can play Relentless Assault. I now have the regulars there. One hit for each side, +1 from Relentless Assault and myself. So I go in with Deadly Strike, that should be enough. Now I get 5 hits that I don't need, but at least Helm's Deep down. And I decide not to draw a new card, because I'm not sure what I'm going to play. I mean, I'm gonna play one card, then I'm down to nothing. But I mean, I know I'm gonna play Nazgul Strike with a Palantir. I can reposition the Nazgul and then go on to my next target. I think it's a mistake not drawing a card here. But yeah, not the biggest one, I guess. So yeah, ask Peter, what do you do here? You can either try to muster Gandalf to war and try and protect Dol Amroth, or you try and muster up Rohan. I think those are the two most promising options. Yeah, and he musters up Rohan, which makes sense because then he might have a shot of retaking Helm's Deep. There's only 4 HP in there. That's doable. Yeah, and he moves the Shire to Tower Hills, which would allow him, if he has a Playbook of Mazabul, and get Pippin, the Eredlune, and the Dwarfs to war. But I mean, even then, that would accelerate my Mouth of Sauron. So yeah, I play Nazgul Strike now. Same reason as before with the Shield of Spain. You want to play it last in a turn, unless you really need the reveal right now. Because there's a pretty good chance I will reveal him, like with 3 dice plus a reroll, hitting on 4s, that's almost guaranteed to hit. And it's 6 reveal tiles against 5 non-reveal tiles, so it's very likely that I'll reveal him. Which means he needs to spend a die next turn, which is probably more precious to him than the dice this turn, just to hide and then move again, which means he cannot make Mordor next turn. Well, at least it's extremely unlikely. It's a hit, and it's a turn reveal. Does not want to risk Strider now, which makes sense. And finally he gets his will, but it means he cannot move even once this turn. Against 3 eyes, I guess it's okay, but it's not not what he was looking for, I'm sure. But still, I mean, well, he doesn't have to do it right now. Southrons are not at war yet, so Day Without Dawn is not a threat right now. He can hide first, which means I cannot play Breaking Out the Fellowship. And I chose not to draw a card last turn, and now I'm left with only 5, so that was a mistake. Yeah, he hides. Very good. Now I bring the Southrons to war since I cannot play anything anyways. Now he gets Gandalf, so I can't play Day Without Dawn anymore. I can play Palantir, but at this point, like, Fellowship is almost immortal. I'm relatively deep into my decks. I don't think Palantir is gonna be a great play anymore. Especially since I don't want to use an attack to play it, so I'd have to play a Palantir. I'll play the Palantir with a Palantir. Let's see, maybe I have something more useful to do, like Channel Lengthens. So yeah, go for Woodland Drum. And yeah, I'm not 100% sure if that's correct play here because I mean that would have been pretty reckless into Dolgolder, which I might need for Lorien later on. Hmm. But I really want to get Erebor now. I think, yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable play. So 0 hits on both sides, but I take the full 4 because I have backup in Carrick and in Eastrune. So I have expendable guys there. And I get the expected 2 hits. It's pretty good for me. Yeah, and I play Palantir as a combat effect, which, oh wow, and get super lucky this turn. Yeah, and now I know, okay, Erebor is gonna fall for sure, because that army, together with this army, means an almost guaranteed take of Erebor, even through Dane. And while Wooden Realm looked super easy, Helm's Deep was fairly rough. Like I'm still -1 on 6s, -1 on 5s. So it's not super clean, but clean enough, I guess. And the big thing is that Peter's not hitting anything. He's -6 on hits, which shows in the remaining army here, and also the remaining army in Helm's Deep. Yeah, I feel like the first 3 turns went Peter's way, and afterwards they all went my way, especially turn 4. But yeah, ever since then, I really picked up momentum, and he's been losing it for no fault of his. But I mean, luck might change again, just like it did here. So this is a little awkward. I did not want to move. I mean, I attack Erbo now with character die, which would give him the option to field battle me and maybe lock out. Maybe I move armies around first, bring these guys from Iron Hills to Dale. I don't know. But I'm not too mad if he tries to field battle this, because I have the stronger army, I have many more rerolls, and I have Dread and Despair in hand. So that would be a pretty big mistake. And he doesn't go for it, so it's not a big deal here. Yeah, he plays Dane now because he runs the risk of me moving the Southrons, or the Easterlings, into Erebor, and then maybe I have Grant. If he doesn't play now, then it might be too late. But I don't have it. Well, let's buff up Lorraine, because that's still a pretty close battle. Yeah, and again, this is another really rough turn for him. I only have 1 eye. He only has 1 movement, but he needs 3 to make Mordor. Yeah, pretty bad now. And so at this point, it's looking very, very likely for me to win. Maybe even before he manages to declare into Mordor. No hits on this first round, but the second round is a lot better. 3 hits from me, 5 from him. But I still have guys here, like it's not a big problem right now. He moves once, he's safe. I move armies around, threaten Pelagia. And I take Pelagia now, so that all nations are at war. Sorry, needed to sneeze. So all nations are at war now. I keep 1 guy behind in West Ronda so that Umbra is safe. And now I can get in Mouth of Sauron, which will give me an extra attack this turn, which speeds up the game so much for me. Yeah, he musters more in Edoras. And I'm afraid of Helm's Deep now, because he musters up a big army in Edoras. He might bring Gandalf too, maybe even another companion later on. And then that army would be strong enough to threaten a retake on Helm's Deep, which would be the biggest thing he can do to buy him more time. But fortunately, I have Shadow Lengthens, which, yeah, I'm playing now. Then another lead into Helm's Deep, plus these three guys into Erebor, and then, yeah, I mean, then I have, 7 plus 4, 11 HP against 5. That should be more than enough. And winning a siege against 6 HP as 3 people, that is a whole different story. Very difficult to do. So yeah, I'm use the mouth to attack Erebor. I don't need Day Without Dawn anymore, probably. But against advantageous position, it's not really worth to take 2 hits just to hit on 5s. So another pretty friendly round of combat. Oh yeah, and the game crashed once. But no big deal. And another Deadly Strife to seal the deal in Erebor. And suddenly I'm at 8 victory points. And I just drew Corsairs, which I don't really need anymore. But yeah, it's looking very rough now for the Fellowship. Again, only a single move. But this time it's gonna be enough, because he still has Strider. And he knows I don't have Cruel Weather anymore. So he knows he can make it to Mordor this turn. There's pretty much nothing I can do about it anymore. So yeah, now Lorien, and if I take Lorien, I'm at 10 victory points, and the game is over. And it's almost impossible for him to stop this. But Lorien's gonna be rough. I mean, it's 9 HP there. I only have 12. So there's a world where this does not work. The Balrog 1 hit, charge 1 hit, that's fair. And again, I get fairly lucky combat in Lorien, and Peter does not. And I don't need to win this turn, because he cannot win next turn. It's impossible. Almost impossible. So I drew Shadows Gather. I know I need some more guys in Lorien, because it's still 6 HP on defense against 8 HP on my side. So the idea is to bring the leftover army from Erebor all the way to Lorien. And then win next turn, because I know I have at least one more turn to win the game. And I play Shelob now, because I don't need to rush Shadows Gather this turn. And so this is looking great for me, but I mean, he only needs to hold out this turn, and then there's a world where he wins next turn. So while I feel pretty good about my chances, they are not, like, super safe. I attack Lorien once now, because I know I have 6 guys as backup. There's no way with this army that he can sortie out of it. And I'm afraid he might have a card to send Gandalf to Lorien, so I want to attack Lorien before I make it super obvious that I'm gonna strike there. Because, I mean, there's still a world where I go after Dol Amroth or Minas Tirith or some other place. Yeah, I do want to keep him guessing a bit, and I do want to strike Lorien while it's still fairly vulnerable. And he does have, while here, he can bring Gandalf in. But I don't feel comfortable enough playing Grant as an event because it's only 8 HP against his 6, so that could go completely wrong and lose me the game. Yeah, nice stop here. I got 2 hits. Well, one prevented from shield wall, but still pretty good. And I killed off a regular, so I have room for 6 more units running in there. And nothing can happen in you. Like, this is not Loam. There's no rangers of the north that can threaten a take back. There's nobody coming to the help of the Geo line here. So Gandalf in, but at least I have Mouth of Sauron to get at least 2 rerolls. Not too bad. And I have Onslaught, which is great. Like, if Gandalf is shining, then Onslaught is safe, and that's one of the strongest effects you can play for siege battles against Gandalf, because he cannot block those Onslaught hits. Even if he has Heroic Death, he cannot sacrifice himself to the Onslaught trigger because it happens as 7, and Heroic Death goes before that, I'm pretty sure. Even if it also has a 7, then the Defender's card would be played first. And yeah, that's 3 hits from the Onslaught, plus 1 normal hit, so that's 4 hits. And Gandalf is pretty much dead to rights now. And I drew into another Onslaught. So yeah, Lorien is gone. And now the game is basically over. He has 2 shots that he could try and go for. One is try and take back at Helm's Deep, which would have been something you can try if there was only 4 regulars there. But against 6 HP, that's a whole different story. And the other option is take back Pelargir, which would be very possible if you could combine the Ministerial army with a Lamadon army. But you can't because there's a mountain in the way. And so, yeah, even with 2 attacks, it's almost impossible because you lose combat strength so fast. And then for 2 separate attacks, I'll get the defense bonus twice. Almost impossible. So yeah, I moved Nazgul around to protect both armies because that's the only thing he can really do now. Everything else is way too far away, which is one of the perks of going after the Jew line first, because if you have 5 victory points here, plus Lorien, there's almost no threat of a retake at any point in the game. Like, maybe Lorien, I've seen that happen, but it's a stretch. Like, you need an empty Moria, move Rivendell through Moria into Lorien, and that basically only works if you leave only a single guy and move Lorien down to Helm's Deep, which I didn't need because I took Helm's Deep early. And he has to Hail Mary this. But if it's super close, I do have Cossairs of Umbar, so these 4 HP might be able to retake Pelargir if things go terrible. But they would have to go monumentally bad for me. Because, I mean, he had 10 HP, no, 12 HP against my 11 HP, but I have 4 rerolls, he only has 1. And I have a defense bonus on the first round. And now it's 10 HP against 11 HP, with me having more leadership. So very unlikely for him to work out. And even if he did, like, I might just take the Lamroth next turn, and he's not moving the Fellowship one, so he still can't win next turn. And yeah, the battle plays out like you would expect. It's fairly close, but in the end, I roll very well. He does not, and I win the game. So after a very, very rough start, I got very lucky later on. If you look at the dice, which I can show you now. You will see that it looks pretty balanced. Well, actually, I have a lot of army dice and very low on musters and characters, which is fine. Like, you usually only need one character die on any turn, so you can move Nazgul around once, and there's some plenty of cards that let you do that, so you might not even need too many characters. Armies are just more flexible. Fellowship, -4 on Cs, which is not ideal, but I think the biggest thing was that some of those came during a turn where you really didn't want so many characters. So yeah, I think that turn 4. If that had been different, this might be a whole different story. And then maybe that one turn where you had the chance to maybe risk a ring to kill off Gandalf and bring him back 3 turns earlier or 2 turns earlier. Maybe that would have changed something. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Um, I think I got really lucky later on. He got a good start, but I also think that I timed my cards perfectly well. Like, I always revealed him as the last action, so he had to switch guides to Strider to get a free reveal, but that made it more difficult for him to kill off Gandalf and bought me more time to do other things. And I think my target selection was on point. I don't know how many of you would have spotted the move from Orthanc, Helm's Deep, on a turn when Peter was left with his pants down, basically. Because, yeah, I think this is one of the most overlooked moves in the game by a lot of Shadow players. Because, yeah, you usually don't want to risk Rohan any earlier than you have to. But at the same time, like, the game is not endless. You can afford to lose Saruman if the price is right. Um, and even, I mean, in that turn, it wasn't even a risk. Like, there was no Gandalf in sight, so I risked nothing. I stalled him from moving. Like, if I had not played that move that turn, then he could have moved twice with a Fellowship, would have made it to Mordor. Maybe even 2 turns earlier because he got very unlucky those 2 turns before Mordor. So yeah, would have been a very different game. Anyways, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I think it was a very high level game between both Peter and myself. Um, and I'm looking very much forward to a rematch at some point when I will be free and Peter will be Shadow. And Peter is an excellent Shadow player, maybe the best. So yeah, that's also a game uh, that would be probably worth analyzing. Anyways, yeah, that's it for me for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think and have a nice day. Bye bye.